Hello learners, let us continue with the linkages in nature. We had already discussed about what is an ecosystem, what are the components of the ecosystem, what is the food chain, food web and the trophic levels. Today we are going to discuss about the interrelations and the interdependence of the organisms which are existing in the ecosystem. So in this unit we will be discussing about the ecological pyramids, the pyramid of number, the pyramid of biomass and the pyramid of energy. So what is actually an ecological pyramid? An ecological pyramid is a graphical representation of the trophic structure. We had already discussed about the trophic structure. It starts from the producers at the base to the higher trophic levels, from the producers to the primary consumers, secondary consumers, and then you have the tertiary consumers. So the graphical representation of all these trophic levels or structure, starting from the producers at the base to the higher trophic levels, which forms a successive tier, is called an ecological pyramid. So at the base of the pyramid, you will find the first trophic level, which are the producers. The next trophic level, that is the second trophic level, the third trophic level, the fourth trophic level, and so on. These are the consumers. They may be primary consumers, they may be secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, etc. So this representation of the ecological pyramids are of three kinds: the pyramid of number, the pyramid of biomass and the pyramid of energy. So what is actually the pyramid of number? Pyramid of number represents the number of organisms at each trophic level. How many individuals, how many organisms are present at each trophic level, starting from the producers to the consumers, primary consumers, secondary consumers and the tertiary consumers, etc. The pyramid of biomass, what is this? This is the total biomass at each trophic level, which is measured in terms of the dry weight or the calorific value per unit area and plotted on the graph. So in order to calculate the biomass of the producers, we collect and weigh the plants of a given area. Suppose we want to find out what is the actual biomass present in that particular trophic level, we go and collect and weigh the plants of a given area. So the biomass of these consumers can be done by counting the number of different types of animals, and the total number is then multiplied by the average weight per individual. That gives the approximate biomass at each trophic level. The third type of this ecological pyramid is the pyramid of energy or productivity. So we had discussed about the energy levels also and the energy flow also in the previous unit, and this energy flow per unit time at each of the successive levels, trophic levels, is measured, and the energy decreases, the rate of this energy decreases as we increase in the trophic level at each successive trophic levels. So the energy flow per unit time at each of the successive trophic levels is measured in the pyramid of energy. It gives us the actual functional relationship between the trophic levels. What relationship exists between the producer, the primary consumer, the secondary consumer, and then the tertiary consumers. The pyramid of energy illustrates the energy structure of the ecosystem. And as the trophic level goes higher up, the energy is less. So the producers, they constitute the base of the pyramid, and then various levels of consumers form the top portion of the pyramid. The pyramidal shape reflects a decrease in production as the trophic level goes higher up. So, for example, if you take the pond ecosystem, only a part of the net production of the phytoplankton. So, in a pond ecosystem, we had studied earlier also, the phytoplanktons are the first trophic level. They occupy the first trophic level, and these phytoplanktons, they are ingested by the zooplanktons, that is the second trophic level, that lies in the second trophic level. Now, only a part of this algal production is eaten by the zooplanktons and can be digested and assimilated. Not all of the phytoplanktons which are present in the pond ecosystem are eaten by the zooplanktons. Only a part of the algal production is eaten by the zooplanktons, digested and then assimilated. Now, of the assimilated matter, only a fraction becomes the animal tissue, with a considerable fraction of assimilated energy being respired, which accounts for the lower energy flow at the third and the fourth trophic level, that is the carnivores. So, as you go higher up, you find that the energy level decreases. So, when the zooplankton consumes the phytoplankton, the assimilated or the matter, assimilated or the digested matter, only a fraction of it becomes the animal tissue, and then this is being respired, which accounts for lower energy flow at the third and the fourth trophic levels. It can be noted that the pyramid of energy is always in an upright position, since productivity is expressed on per unit time basis. The pyramid of number and the biomass may not show an upright pyramid. The number of individuals decreases in a grassland. If you observe a grassland ecosystem, you will find that the number of individuals decreases up the trophic levels. The number of plants is greater than that of the herbivores, and the herbivores are more in number than that of the consumers. So, you will find that in a forest ecosystem, many insects feed on a single tree. In just one single tree, you will find so many insects feeding on it, or a number of parasites, they depend on one host. So, pyramid of number may be greater at the level of the consumers. So, it will not show an upright pyramid. The consumer, the number of pyramids may be greater at the consumer level as compared to the producers. So, the pyramid of number and biomass may not show an upright pyramid. The pyramid of biomass are less reversed, but sometimes the biomass of the animals exceed the plants, such as plankton of the temperate region in winter. For example, in the sea, the fishes who are the secondary consumers and the shellfish who are the tertiary consumers give more biomass as compared to the phytoplanktons. The biomass of the animals exceed the plants. The shape of the pyramid of energy is not affected by the size or the rate of metabolism of the organisms, but the pyramid of number and biomass can be affected by the size or the rate of metabolism of the organisms. Now you can see here, this is, you can see in an aquatic ecosystem, you will find the number of zooplanktons, the consumers are more as compared to the phytoplanktons. In the terrestrial ecosystem, you can see the grasses are at the first trophic level, then you have the grasshoppers, the mice, and then the highest level. So this graph represents the pyramid of number in an aquatic ecosystem and terrestrial ecosystem. So in an aquatic ecosystem, you will find the phytoplanktons, they occupy the base, that is the first trophic level. Then the zooplanktons. The number of zooplanktons are more as compared to the number of the phytoplanktons. Then second level of consumer and the tertiary level of consumer. In the terrestrial ecosystem, you have the grasses. The grasses, they occupy the first trophic level, which are the producers, and they are more in number as compared to the first level of consumers or the primary consumers, that is the grasshoppers. The number decreases, and the mice, that is the secondary consumers, and then you have the snakes which eats up the mice. So you can see a comparison between the aquatic ecosystem and the terrestrial ecosystem. So this graph or this picture represents the three ecological pyramids: the pyramid of number, the pyramid of biomass, and the pyramid of energy. So the pyramid of number in the temperate forest, you can see there, it is an inverted pyramid as compared to the grassland ecosystem, where the producers occupy the maximum number, then the primary consumers and secondary consumers. Whereas in a temperate forest in summers, you will find that the number of producers are less as compared to the primary consumers, and then you have the secondary consumers and the tertiary consumers. In the pyramid of biomass, when you compare these systems, in the English Channel, the Wisconsin Lake, the Georgia oil field, and the Eniwetok coral reefs, you will find in the English Channel, the pyramid of biomass is less as compared to the consumers, whereas in the Wisconsin Lake, the producers occupy first trophic level, which has more biomass as compared to the consumers. In the pyramid of energy, as seen in the Silver Spring, Florida, the producers at the base with the maximum energy, then the energy level decreases as they go up, or as they go higher up the successive trophic levels. Deforestation is also known to lead to the loss of the endemic primate species which flourished in the natural forests. When the felling of the trees leads to the loss of the endemic species also, and also the primate species and endemic species which are only available in that particular forest. It also wipes out the source of food of the herbivores. When there is deforestation or the felling of the trees, the food of the herbivores are being wiped out. Also, the use of pesticides in croplands disturb the ecological balance. When you use the artificial or the chemical fertilizers and pesticides, it leads to health hazards of the environment as well as to human health, and thus it disturbs the ecological balance. This is a video showing a bee pollinating a flower. The insects, they also play a role as pollinators, By carrying the pollen grains, the bee carries the pollen grains from one flower to another, affecting fertilization and seed setting process in crops as well as in wild plant species. And it may be noted that the flowers pollinated by bees are always yellow in color. The pollen transfer help in genetic reshuffling, which helps in producing species and varieties with superior genetic makeup. Biocides check the pest but also wipe out many useful and non-target organisms acting as pollinators. So when you use certain biocides, they check or they control the pests but also wipe out many useful and non-target organisms acting as pollinators. The farmers, they also prefer the use of natural organisms, friendly fertilizers, which does not harm the environment as well as the human health. The use of natural organisms, like they may be a use of biological control agent, it may be a bacteria, it may be a fungi, etc., which is able to promote the growth of the plant or the crop plant without using the chemical fertilizers. And also, it also has the ability to produce certain plant growth promoting hormones and also inhibiting the growth of certain pathogens also, thus protecting the crop plants in a natural way. Up till now, we have already studied about the ecosystem, the food chain, the food web, and the interrelationships and interdependence. Now, all of these organisms are interlinked with each other. You cannot imagine an organism living in isolation. They are linked with each other in either way. If you visualize a natural ecosystem like a pond, lake, forest, or even an island ecosystem, all organisms which are inhabiting that natural ecosystem, they are interdependent with each other. And all these organisms which inhabit a given area constitute a community. They may be microorganisms or they may be macroorganisms also. They depend on each other directly or indirectly. The organisms, they are also linked with their abiotic environment in a complex way. They totally depend on both the abiotic and the biotic components. They are interdependent with each other. Now let us come to a different topic, which is how is the nature linked with the tourism industry. We all know that tourism is an umbrella term for all the relationships and the visiting different where the tourists, they visit different parts of the country, the world with certain specific objectives. Now, how does tourism link, how is it related with nature or the environment? The tourists, they visit a particular spot or an area, and the activities of the tourists, they exert a certain amount of pressure on the environment. Now, how do they exert these pressure on the environment? How do they affect the environment? When the tourists visit a destination or a spot, because of their activities, and what kind of activities do they display? They use certain off-road vehicles in dunes. Then the tourists, they, with their activities of wildlife observation, they disturb the feeding and the breeding habits of the birds and the animals. They come with their cameras, they come with their video recording, which disturbs the normal feeding and breeding habits of the organisms in that particular spot. Another important thing is the waste which is discarded by the tourists at their destination, which poses a major threat to that very spot as a tourist spot. The next adverse effect the tourists play is in the seaside tourist resorts, the untreated raw sewage are released from their accommodation and is discharged into the sea, which affect the marine life because these untreated raw sewages directly fall into the sea and affect the marine life and communities existing on the shores and also in the nearby areas. Then another adverse effect is the excursions and the educational trips which are arranged by educational institutions. These students, they try to collect as much of the rare flora of that particular site. They uproot the rare endangered species which are available in that particular destination spot, or they collect and leave this place damaged, resulting in loss of that either it may be an endemic species or it may be an endangered species. Now, all these activities affect the nature and the environment. But there has been no messages which has been properly documented to the people to make them aware of what is their role in the environment. The messages are just locked up in books, papers, and journals. So it is necessary to create a review of the impact of tourism industry on the environment. A proper ecological planning management is necessary to conserve the environment and protect the biodiversity of the spot. Now, summarizing this unit of the linkages in nature, the environment consists of the biotic and the abiotic components that are interrelated with each other in an ecosystem. The source of the energy is the sun, which is trapped by the producers and converted into biomass. The herbivores feed on the producers, which are in turn eaten by the carnivores. The grazing food chain starts with the plants, which are the producers, followed by the consumers, and the detritus food chain starts from the dead remains of plants and animals, and then they are converted into a usable form. Each level in the food chain is known as a trophic level, and the ecosystem has a larger base of producers followed by consumers and top consumers. Thank you.